Today on the Bourbon Bites podcast, I'm reviewing my first Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Private Barrel Select, plus talking about all the new whiskeys and video games coming out in May 2022. Hello everyone and welcome to the Bourbon Bites podcast. I'm your host Clifton, and today I'm getting around to doing a review I have long awaited. So this is a review of my very first bottle of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Private Barrel Select. Now, I will say I have had a couple of pours from different barrels. My first was actually at a restaurant in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the second being at a friend's house a few weeks ago. But this is my first bottle I've been able to get myself and really take time to digest it. I've had quite a few pours from this bottle, so I'm ready to go ahead and give it a review. As some of you may know, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is always my go-to favorite bourbon. If anyone ever asks, what's your favorite bourbon? I always say Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. This time, we are trying a Private Barrel Select, which is relatively new. I think last year was when they were first introduced. This one happens to come to us from Circus Liquor out of North Hollywood, California. One of my go-to stores back when I lived in that area when I first moved to California. They're very iconic. They have a really big clown sign out front and neon lights. You've probably seen celebrities posing with it like Miley Cyrus. It's very iconic to North Hollywood. But yeah, I heard that they had a private barrel pick of this. Went in and saw they had plenty of it in stock. They did not have a limit. So of course I texted my local group and asked who wanted a bottle. I ended up walking out of there with 6 of them. I felt kind of bad, but they had plenty more to go around. It definitely was a hard hit on my credit card. But I'm glad that it got approved and did not get, denied and fraud alerts and all that stuff. But this is a 10-year-old Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. It is 127.2 proof. Now, if you're not familiar with these barrel proof picks, they all are various ages. The typical Elijah Craig Barrel Proof in the batches is a 12-year-old release. However, these single barrels range from, I think the lowest, I think I saw an 8-year ones, but I'm not sure. Usually they're between 9 and 11 for the most part with these releases. So this is a 10-year release, 127.2, pretty respectable proof there. So let's go and get this open and in the glass. So like I said, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is my go-to favorite bourbon. It's just, to me, the best expression of what I look for in a bourbon. I have long been a fan of Heaven Hill, even from my early days of getting into bourbon. Just kind of fell in love with their, flavor profile. A little bit nutty, but very desserty. It's kind of just what I look for in a bourbon. So with standard Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, 12 years old, barrel proof, and reasonably priced when it was available. The past couple years, it's been very difficult to find bottles, but just in general, it's been a staple in my collection. I've never been without a bottle of it. So I'm really excited to dive into this Private Select because this is a single barrel. So the regular Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is a batch. They do 3 batches a year, the A batch, B batch, and C batch. But yeah, this is a new program they have at Heaven Hill. They've previously had Elijah Craig picks, but they were all the standard lower proof. I think it's 94 proof. So I'm so excited. This has been a long-awaited request from people to be able to do these picks at barrel proof. So I'm really, really excited about this. I hope they become a little more available. Like I said, I found this one just at this liquor store, but other than that, they go pretty quickly. I think I got lucky with some intel about that bottle, but let's go and give this one a nose. Man, just that Heaven Hill traditional, I always call it like walking into like a bakery, like dessert shop. That nose is just so inviting. It's definitely fruit forward. I mean, I just had a pour of the latest batch, the A122 of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, just before this, just to do a little comparison, because I figured it's been a minute since I've had some Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. That one on the nose was a lot more oak forward. This one I'm not getting as much oak, but I'm really getting those bright red fruits on the nose of this one. And that's followed by this nice like pie crust kind of note as well. When the pie crust gets a little bit burnt, so it's kind of like hard on the ends. I love that. I'm getting a little bit of that little bit of like burnt crust kind of note. But it meshes beautifully with that fruitiness. I mean, this smells so much like a fruit pastry or a fruit tart. I can't wait to give it a try. So let's go ahead and try it out. Cheers, guys. There's that oak. I was getting a bit worried because on the nose I was getting so much of the, the typical qualities I expect, but I wasn't getting that oak, which is something that I come to expect because Like I said, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is usually 12 years old, so I'm glad that this one is, 2 years younger, but it's still really rich and bold, and that saturated oak note I talk about so much that I love, it's definitely in this glass. I will say this is a lot sweeter than the batch A122 that I just had. Now, that one was the first release of 2022, and I can't really compare it to any of the batches that are coming later this year, obviously. But I don't want to compare it to the ones from last year either. I feel like, that if you start comparing, year to year to year, you're obviously going to be nostalgic about the older releases and, not give it a fair judgment. So I always like doing a blind at the end of the year, comparing the A batch, B batch, and C batch. So if you're not yet following me on YouTube, that's where I do all of my blind flights as well as other whiskey flights. I really love doing those live streams on Thursday nights. So if you're not yet following me on YouTube, definitely check out that channel and subscribe if you want to see me go live on Thursday nights. I also do produced video reviews there. I actually have one coming out this week of Yellowstone Family Recipe. Of course, Patreon got an early access look at that one, which you can support me for as little as $2 a month on Patreon. It does go to help support the show, buy bottles like this private barrel Elijah Craig to review. But you get access to really fun things at the higher tiers. You can check it out, but really am thankful for my patrons. And I want to give a shout out to my newest patron, Mike Stahl. Y'all may know from Livewire Whiskey. We were hanging out a bit on Whiskey Encore's stream the other night, and he realized he wasn't a patron of me, and he decided to become a patron. So thank you so much for that, Mike. I'm not sure if you listen to the podcast, but really appreciate you and everyone that's, a patron, whether they, have supported me from the beginning or ones that are joining just now. I'm glad you're along for the journey, and I can't wait to see where it takes us. Elijah Craig always puts me in like a good mood, so I think that's why I want to give a Patreon shout out, because y'all make me so happy. But this Elijah Craig makes me really happy too. So let me give it a second sip. Oh yeah, that hits so oak forward. Some people might consider that astringent, but to me, I think it's absolutely what I look for. I love a lot of oak influence on a bourbon. Now, if it's too oaky and it doesn't have the sweetness, I feel like, it's a little out of balance, but this isn't. This is oaky up front and then really, really sweet mid-palate. The folks over at Circus Liquor have done an amazing job with this pick. Like I said, I've had a couple of other ones, just a pour of it, so I didn't really have a chance to really dive into it and really take my time with it, but man, this bottle is just impressing me more and more after I have it. I'm about halfway done at this point. I remember my first pour out of it, I was not super impressed, but the more time I've spent with this bottle, the more I'm really, really falling in love with it. So well done to the folks at Circus Liquor. I heard they're getting a lot of new picks in this year, so I'm going to have to start checking them out more often. They're not that far from me, even at my new place. So if you are in the Southern California area, definitely check out Circus Liquor out of North Hollywood. They have another store over in Van Nuys, but their main store is in North Hollywood. So definitely check them out and let them know I sent you. So I'm going to keep enjoying this whiskey in my glass while I tell you about some new releases coming out this month. Y'all know how I do at the beginning of every month. I do a overview of what's to come, whether it's new whiskeys, new video games, or recent discoveries on the TTB website. So we have a mix of all three here today, so hopefully you are excited about these. I know I am. Quite a few of these I cannot wait to pick up. So let's dive into it. First of all, I want to talk about the brand new Riff release that was announced to Whiskey Club members. This is their very first finished New Riff whiskey. So they are introducing a New Riff Sherry Finish 100% malted rye whiskey. Now this is going to be a barrel proof release. It's going to be 112.7 proof. As always, non-chill filtered and aged for at least 6 years. But this press release got me really excited about this release. Y'all know I love a good sherry finish on American whiskey and Scotch. It can impact the flavor so much, and especially with a rye whiskey, I think it really complements those spicy rye flavors. But this one is a 100% malted rye. Now, the only time I've ever had anything like that was the Old Potrero out of San Francisco. I actually had that recently on a blind flight that my friend Brandon provided me with on YouTube. It was from some Map Madness training. I'm not the biggest fan of Old Potrero. I don't know if it's just, their malted rye or just malted rye in general. But to me, it was just super funky, super dill forward. It's just not my typical flavor profile. Now, they do mention a San Francisco malted rye whiskey here. But they do say they don't want to compare themselves to that one because they are very much a Kentucky version of that. So with that one, they used barrels. It was pot distilled and also very young. This, though, is, of course, Kentucky approach. It's brand new charred oak barrels, 6 years old, and then finished with those sherry casks. So they say they consider this a malt-forward whiskey. They like to think of it more of a malt whiskey over a rye whiskey. So it's going to be a good bit different than what we're used to with New Riff Rye. Now, I know they have the Maltster releases. I actually have a sample of the Maltster Rye that Brian Brennicky, a supporter and patron of the show, sent me. And I would love to do a little side-by-side if I get my hands on this bottle, to do that Maltster, which it's a bourbon, of course, but they use a malted rye in that mash bill. So I would love to compare that one. I also have the Maltster wheat. That'd be a really fun live stream. I just have to get my hands on this new malted rye before I can do that. Or at least a sample. So if you know someone with a bottle that's willing to share a sample, I will love you forever. Email me, contact@bourbonbites.com. Now, we don't know the release date of this yet. They typically release these late May based on previous spring releases. I just wanted to throw it into this month's podcast, just in case it comes out this month. Also, they just announced this earlier this week, so it's definitely hot off the press. But I'm really, really excited. I'm curious to see how it compares to Old Potrero, which, like I said, wasn't my favorite, but I've loved most of what New Riff has done, and this sherry finish just sounds right up my alley. So keep an eye on that, and if you get a bottle, like I said, let me know. Next up are two new releases from the Jack Daniel's distillery. One is a bonded Tennessee whiskey, and the other is a triple mash blended straight whiskey. So I think I did talk a little bit about these when the TTB labels came out on a previous podcast. However, they have been officially announced as of this week. So both of these whiskeys are bonded, so they're going to come in at 100 proof. But there's a little bit of a difference between the two. So the bonded, of course, is the typical Jack Daniel's, but it's just been bonded and aged for at least 4 years, which if you're not familiar, bonded means it's, bottled in bond. So it's the same distilling season, single distiller, matured in government bonded warehouses, at least 4 years old and 100 proof. There's other requirements too to be a bonded whiskey, but so we do know this is going to be a 4-year-old Jack Daniel's, which, we love Jack Daniel's with age statements. I reviewed the 10-year on a recent podcast, which was absolutely fantastic. Just such a delicious pour. I'm really excited to see how that whiskey, handles, the 100 proof as well as the 4-year plus age statement. Definitely want to keep an eye out for that one. I know a few other whiskey tubers have gotten bottles for review. I don't think I'm on Brown Forman's PR list, but, I need to get on that. Now, the other one is the triple mash. This one, like I said, is also bottled in bond, so it is 100 proof. So it's a blend of 3 different bottled and bond whiskeys, including 60% Tennessee rye, 20% Tennessee whiskey, and 20% American malt. So all of these were distilled on site in Lynchburg, Tennessee, in the same distilling season, and aged under the Bottle and Bond Act. So 3 separate whiskeys, but they all follow the same rules for the bottle and bond, the same season and everything. They're blended together and bottled at 100 proof. This one has got me really interested. I mean, this is a completely different mash bill. So the standard mash bill, or the mash bill for their regular bonded release, is 80% corn, 12% malted barley, and 8% rye. So this one is going to be primarily 60% Tennessee rye, 20% Tennessee whiskey, which is, I guess, their standard mash bill, and 20% American malt. I love Jack Daniel's barrel proof rye. Now, this is 100 proof, but if this is anywhere as good as that release, I think we got something really, really special here. And I'm really excited to see how the malt, the American malt, really blends with this. I mean, same with the New Riff. I mean, this is adding a whole nother layer of character to this whiskey. Whether I like it or not is to be determined. But Jack Daniel's has been doing some incredible stuff with their new releases and their limited releases. So I think this will be no exception. I'm really, really excited to get my hands on this. Now, funny enough, this is actually going to be released at a price of $30 and $33 at retail, of course. Now, these are going to be 700 milliliter bottles, and they will be coming out this month, May 2022. So keep an eye out. I'm not sure, if these are going to be, it says a limited market, so I'm not really sure where these are going to be available, but let me know if you guys are seeing this and in what areas. They don't really list out any states where they're going to be available. I'm really excited for these 2 new releases coming this month. And the last whiskeys I want to talk about are 2 new releases from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Now, these have not been announced as far as I'm aware. These are thanks to Cumming Whiskey on Instagram, who has perused the TTB website and came across these new releases. The first of which is another bottled in bond release. This is part of their Origin series, which I think is new. I don't think I've heard of that before. This is a 6-year-old bottled in bond Kentucky straight bourbon. Mash bill 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. This was distilled all the way back in fall 2016 at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. One of the oldest whiskeys that I feel like I've seen come out of there, which is in itself is what makes me really excited. You know, a lot of times I feel like the Bardstown Bourbon Company releases that I've tried before taste a little young, you know, whether it's just the mash bill or just the fact that they are actually young. Seeing a 6-year come out of there, I can't wait to try this one. I really hope I get my hands on a bottle because I know that they're putting out quality distillate. I just feel like other releases were a bit too young, so can't wait to try this one. Now, the other one is another release from them. It's called Bardstown Bourbon Company Blended Rye Whiskey, finished in infrared toasted cherry oak barrels. So this is a collaboration with the West Virginia Great Barrel Company. Now, this is a part of their collaborative series, and they say it's the most unique release in the series yet. So they worked with this barrel company, the nation's most advanced cooperage. They filled cherry and oak hybrid barrels charred using state-of-the-art infrared technology with 6-year-old Indiana rye for 10 weeks. We then blended 12-year-old Canadian whiskey for a flavor that is unlike anything you've ever tasted in this series. So that's all the info we really have on this so far. We don't know the actual blend. Y'all know I love my Indiana rye. Canadian whiskey, it's kind of hit or miss with me. You know, some releases have been fantastic. I think of Alberta Premium or some of the Obtainium releases. So I'm not quite sure what to expect with this one. This one, you know, has me a little more speculative compared to the Bottle and Bond release. But nonetheless, these are coming soon. Now, I can't guarantee these will be out this month. We just saw the TTB labels earlier this week. So let me know if you're interested in either of those, and I'll try to get my hands on them. But I'm mostly interested in getting the Bottled and Bond, the 6-year Bardstown Bourbon Company release. And y'all know I can't end this podcast without a gaming twist, so there are quite a few video games coming out this month. In fact, one that's been anticipated by a lot of folks came out earlier this week, actually yesterday if you're listening to this on Friday. So on May 5th, the game Trek to Yomi, I think it's pronounced, came out. Now this came out on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, the whole shebang. Now this is a side-scrolling Japanese samurai-themed game. I've seen quite a few trailers for it at gaming conferences. But I'm excited to see this finally be released. Y'all know I love the side-scrolling action games. As a classic, you know, retro gamer, these are kind of what I grew up with. Of course, this takes an absolutely beautiful artistic take on it. I mean, the art styles and the design of this game just look really, really great. So I definitely plan to pick that up maybe when it goes on sale. I don't think it's going to be a day one purchase for me, but it's definitely something that looks really, really nice. And I'm curious, you know, to start reading some reviews and seeing what people think of it, because it just came out yesterday, if you're listening to this on Friday. Another game that caught my interest that's coming out this month is Evil Dead the Game. So this game takes place in the worlds of the Evil Dead movies, as well as the Army of Darkness films and Ash vs. Evil Dead TV. Now, I will admit, I've seen the original Evil Dead, and that's about it. I'm not really caught up in the world of Evil Dead. It seems to be pretty popular, though. I didn't realize there was a TV show even, you know, based on it, but apparently there is. But y'all know I love a good horror game, and this one is no exception. This is going to be a co-op multiplayer experience. Players are going to team up as a group of 4 survivors who are going to be exploring, looting, and searching for key items to seal the breach between worlds. Work together with friends fighting for the forces of good, or join the enemy and start hunting players and swallowing their souls. So that comes out on May 13th on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. So definitely sounds like one would be a fun party game. And the last game I want to talk about is a new release of an old classic. This is Pac-Man Museum Plus. So this is a new game dropping on May 27th across all platforms that presents over 40 years of the Pac-Man series into one curated collection. So this is a collection of 14 games, including the obvious classics and some relatively new releases from the Pac-Man series. And it's going to be a tribute to, you know, the Pac-Man legacy. Like I said, over 40 years of gaming. I'm a huge fan of Pac-Man. I love when arcade bars have Miss Pac-Man. Literally, I'm a boss of that game. I would love to challenge someone to that game, because I feel like I'm pretty good at it. Like, I'm not good at mini games, but Mrs. Pac-Man, oh yeah, I kick butt in that. Now, Pac-Man Museum Plus has a lot of collectibles. It says you can earn coins by completing missions, which are used to customize your in-game arcade. You can change the gaming cabinets, the figures, the decorations, the wallpaper, and a jukebox to personalize the soundscape. So I love games like this. You know, you unlock things, you kind of customize your space. If you are a big Pac-Man fan, you got to check this out. I got so excited when I watched the trailer. There's also online leaderboards where you can compare your high score to everyone across the globe. So make sure to check out the Mrs. Pac-Man. My name's going to be at the very top of it. No, but seriously, I can't wait to play this one. It's coming out on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch on May 27th, which happens to be my wedding anniversary. So, that's probably how I'm going to be celebrating, with some Pac-Man. So there are quite a few other games and whiskeys that are probably coming out this month, but I just want to show you the highlights, some of the ones that I'm really most excited for. If you guys know of any other ones, please let me know on our Discord server, which you can find at bourbonbites.com. We have a great community there where we have an arcade where we talk about games, and we talk about some whiskey news as well. So if you want to see the latest and breaking news, definitely check out our Bourbon Bites Whiskey and Gaming Lounge Discord server. But until next time, thank y'all so much for listening. This has been Bourbon Bites, a whiskey podcast with a gaming twist. Cheers, and I'll talk to you next episode.